Welcome, my friends, to the Bob and Brad podcast, produced by Bob and Brad, the two most famous physical therapists on the internet. I am Bob, exactly one half of the Bob and Brad team. And today, my partner in crime is actually
Mike Keenetz, PT assistant.
Right, no Brad. But we're going to talk about with Ross Clifford. He is the author of the book. Mike, want to say it?
Build your own bulletproof body, all bodyweight exercises or stretches and foam rolling as well.
You're going to find this really interesting. Here we go. Welcome to the program, Ross Clifford. So I'm big fan of the book, Build Your Own Bulletproof Body. We'll have a link below. Really well done. I like the approach. We're not talking about putting armor around the body, though, are we?
That's correct. No, we're not. We're talking about building some resilience from within the body, hopefully.
Wonderful. So while we go to get started here, we got a lot of questions. First, could we have your backstory, a little background?
Yes, of course. So my name's Ross Clifford. I'm from the United Kingdom and I'm a physiotherapist by background. But my journey first started in sport and exercise science, which is where I first developed a passion for the way that the human body moves. And then I went on to study physiotherapy, which I guess you guys call physical therapists over in the States. And started that journey just over 15 years ago, really. And ever since have began to specialize more in musculoskeletal injuries and rehabilitation. And and then a few years ago, this idea about writing the book, Bulletproof Bodies, or How to Build Your Own Bulletproof Body, came into being. And then the rest is history, as they say.
Wonderful. Yeah. And again, we'll have a link below. Why did you decide to write the book?
I've always been an advocate of exercise as a means of improving the condition of the human body, particularly the musculoskeletal system, but also, the benefits are so widespread, the cardiovascular system, the respiratory, the effects on type 2 diabetes, mental health, you name it. Exercise can help restore much of the function across the board.
Yeah.
But in particular, my journey with this type of musculoskeletal theme came with my own injury that I had. I had a hip impingement, and this was about probably 6 or 7 years ago now. I got to the point where I really felt I needed surgery on my hip. Every time I would go to sit down and then stand up again, my hip would lock to the point where I couldn't wait there for maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And I went to see an orthopedic surgeon. I had an X-ray, I had an MRI scan, I had what's called an MRA scan, which is where they put a dye in to the hip. And the outcome was, Ross, there's basically nothing wrong with your hip that we can see. So I went back to my roots and I thought, right, if there's no external help for this, I'll help myself. And I found a core of bodyweight exercises that for me really hit the spot. And within 6 weeks of doing that, I'd cured 3 years of hip pain.
Wow.
And I just couldn't believe it, because I was doing the right type of exercise for me, targeted at the problem. And I just thought, if everybody could access this to some degree, surely that information needs to be shared. And so Bulletproof Bodies was born.
Sounds like a good concept.
So you're a big advocate of bodyweight exercises. Can you give us some reasons why?
Well, it's free.
Yeah, that's true.
It's accessible. So, you don't need to wait for a gym to open or to have to pay for a gym membership. But as well, there's a great introduction to the book that talks about how it's not a new form of exercise. It's quite a fashionable form of exercise, but actually it's not a fad. It's not something that will come and go like a wearable technology.
Sure.
This is something that, has been done for thousands of years and still continues in the form of yoga and Pilates and all those sorts of things. So it's tried and tested. So I think that's the main reason. But it can be done almost anywhere at any time. You don't need specialist equipment. You could do it outdoors, weather permitting. But for me, the one major reason that I think makes bodyweight exercise so fantastic is that in any given exercise, you use multiple joints and multiple muscles at any given time. So if you take the example of a bench press versus a push-up, And if you think of a bench press, you're quite passive, you're laid onto the bench,
Right.
and all that's really working is the chest and the arms.
Yep.
If you flip that into a press up, then before you even start, you've got the plank position, you've got all the muscles around the core, the buttocks, the hip flexors, all the way down into the gastrocnemius and the calf. And that's before you've even started doing the press, the push-up itself. So you use all of these muscles. And so actually you can get a much more intensive workout in a short space of time.
Yeah,
So,
you have a co-author on this, right? Ashley Callum?
Oh, yes. Ashley Calum. Yeah,
Callum.
now, Ashley is an absolute monster when it comes to calisthenics. He is such a fantastic athlete. And he has a book out as well called Complete Calisthenics.
I saw that.
And it is an amazing text. And that's actually the first time I came across Ashley. I was so impressed with his book when I actually bought it as a reader.
I see.
That I felt compelled to contact him and say, look, I've got this idea for a book. Would you collaborate? And from there, the relationship was born. And we've actually written a few other books since then. But yeah, he's very knowledgeable, certainly about what the limits of the body can do. And he's really pushed his body in a military capacity, but also just from an exercise point of view.
So your book is not only about the prevention of injuries, but also treatment of chronic injuries, primarily using bodyweight exercises. Could you talk about the repair process of connective tissue and what may be happening with a chronic injury?
Okay, yeah, sure. Right, so I guess you've got two answers. You've got a very technical one, and you've got a very basic one. So I'm going to try and go down the middle here.
It's a weeds a little bit.
we'll go fairly simple.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, with chronic injuries, there are three approaches. Either your body is not strong enough and not resilient enough to take the external forces being imposed on it. So therefore, that leaves you with three options. Either you make your body more resilient.
Right. You
either change the stress on your body by doing something different, or you reduce the stress on your body. But they're the three options that you've got.
Sure.
If you get back pain from your job, you've either got to change the way that you do your job, change your job. Both of those things might be quite difficult. Or
Sure.
Thirdly, make your body more able to cope with those stressors. So if we take that as the line of the book, which is Bulletproof Bodies, how do we make our bodies more resilient? So with chronic injuries, we generally talk about the body going through phases of repair. Now, if you damage yourself in acute injury, you often get the injury itself, then some inflammation, and then a repair process where the body sort of replicates its cells. We call that proliferation. But with a chronic injury, it tends to sit in those latter stages, and you don't necessarily get the inflammation. You just get tissues that are being stretched, they're under a prolonged load. So the idea really is that you reduce that load and you make those tissues stronger, or you bring them more aligned to reduce the stress that's on them. So often when you get connective tissue repair, we talk about collagen, scar tissue, as it's more commonly known. And the idea is if you've got that scar tissue that develops, you try and remodel that by putting the better type of stress through it, rather than the chronic loading stress that your day-to-day life places on your body. So it's about how you influence the collagen and the connective tissue or the scar tissue that's important.
Makes sense. So you answered my question already, Mike. Why don't you jump in?
So how can bodyweight exercises accomplish proper repair?
Well, that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? So the idea is that it creates a better type of stress on the body. It creates better alignment, so maybe through the spine, posture of the shoulder, for example. So what you're doing is you're not overloading some tissues and underloading other tissues.
I see.
Because actually what we've come to realize over the last decade is there are injuries that are caused by underloading of the body, particularly around the shoulder, what we call the rotator cuff. So it's not just overloading, but it's underloading being an issue as well. And it's about rebalancing those stresses, which I feel you can do with targeted body weight exercise. But the main thing as well, it's about moving the body regularly, whether that is body weight exercise or any type of exercise. And the analogy I always use with my patients is if you think of a rubber band or an elastic band, I'm not sure what you guys call that in the States, but if you take a
rubber band,
what is say again?
Rubber band,
or
a rubber band.
resistance
Okay, so if you take a rubber band and we put it on stretch for a long period of time, and then after maybe a year, you take it off that pile of papers that it's been on, and it doesn't actually recoil to its original length. And the reason for that is you've deformed the fibers that make up that rubber band, and they might be permanently deranged and deformed. And this is the same is true of connective tissue collagen. If it's on a prolonged stress, it may not recoil. So the idea is you maintain that good alignment, and you stop the deformation of those fibers.
So do you think you can use body weight exercises for osteoarthritis?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know it's a big problem for you guys over there as well, but in the UK, we have, close to 10 million people in the UK who are suffering from osteoarthritis.
Right.
And we have these things over here called NICE guidelines, which are produced by a body of experts that inform clinicians on how best to manage osteoarthritis. And the number one form of management for osteoarthritis is exercise.
Exercise, yes.
Without a doubt. In fact, just recently in the UK, there was a bit of a news push on the fact that we need to reduce our reliance on painkillers, particularly opioid painkillers,
right,
and move people to exercise. So whether that be body weight exercise or any form of exercise, movement is the way forward. And there's another sort of a common bit of language we use here called motion is lotion.
Right, we got that one too.
Yeah, and it's about lubricating the body, particularly with osteoarthritic joints. They contain synovial fluid. Dissolved in that fluid are the nutrients, and unless you disperse that fluid, you don't disperse those nutrients, and the health of the joint declines. Sure. So absolutely, it's a key form of management for osteoarthritis.
Could you describe the difference between tendinitis and tendinopathy?
Oh, okay. So again, technical. We'll keep it straightforward. So tendinitis is more of an outdated term, particularly in the UK, in that we don't often see inflammation associated with tendon problems. Agreed. That's more of an acute issue. When we tend to see chronic overuse tendon problems, as I'm sure you guys are aware,
right,
we already have gone past that inflammatory stage. So any form of sort of medical terminology with itis at the end suggests inflammation. So as a term, it doesn't quite describe what's going off with the pathology. So as a broader term, we use the opathy, which basically means there's a pathology with the joint, whether that's an arthropathy, so a joint problem as opposed to arthritis, or a tendinopathy, which is a tendon problem. And the current understanding is it's more of a degenerative breakdown of the tendon where the remodeling process hasn't quite caught up with the degree of breakdown.
So, I mean,
does that fit with what you guys understand over
exactly. There? Right. I mean, it's quite often it should be used, tendinitis. Right.
Can bodyweight exercises help with tendinopathy?
Definitely. Yeah. So again, if you look at the research that's out there, one of the key forms of management of a tendinopathy, which, as I say, is this more degenerative breakdown versus rebuild issue. One of the key forms of management is loaded movement. And there's a lot of talk around something called an eccentric movement, which, as again, I'm sure you guys are aware, it's where you load the tendon as it lengthens, as opposed to a concentric movement where you load the tendon as it shortens, or the muscle, should I say. Yeah. So the idea is that as you load a tendon as it's lengthening, that creates the stimulus for that tendon to regenerate and to rebuild. So there's no better way of doing that really than using body weight exercise. So whether that's single leg, calf raises, double leg calf raise, on the edge of a step where you allow the heel to drop that little bit lower to get that stretch. So yeah, there are myriad exercises that you could use from a body weight perspective that would give you that benefit.
Oh, wonderful. So I like the term you use, niggle. You want to define that?
Is this a UK word then? Is it?
I think so.
Yeah, it's not common over here. I think I've heard it once.
I've
or
heard
twice.
it before, but I'm not sure where.
It's a niggle is like an annoyance. So it's not something that's.
It sounds like that.
It's certainly not an anatomical term. So I don't want to mislead you guys on that. But it's basically this annoying pain that won't go away. It's maybe not something you would think I need to see a physical therapist about, but it's also something that's not settling by itself.
Sure.
It's that little bit of tightness you get in your calf every time you go for a run, or it's that little bit of a shoulder ache that you get every time you play basketball. So it's that thing in the background that just doesn't seem to go away. Doesn't really restrict you, but it's always there in the background, and it's maybe a suggestion that you should do something about it. So yeah, sure. That's what we would call a niggling injury.
Yeah, my age, I get big niggles. So
yeah, I'm at that age where I get a lot of niggles.
So just quickly, can you touch on muscle recovery? What helps? What hurts? I mean, I know it's a big topic, but if you just want to maybe give your the stuff that you most rely on.
Okay, so muscle recovery, there is a section in the book actually around sort of recovery.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things I talk about in the book is how when you exercise muscles, they actually break down. And it's the breakdown of those tissues that is then the stimulus for rebuild.
Right.
And this is why, as you guys will know, as your sort of followers will know, when you go and do some exercise that you haven't done for a while, you will ache for a few days afterwards. And that is your body saying you have created a degree of breakdown of muscle. And we call that DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness. But effectively, it's a type of injury. So to recover from that injury, you need adequate rest. You also need some degree of active recovery to flush the metabolic waste products out of the area, to stimulate further growth. You need good nutrition, particularly in the form of protein, because muscles are protein, as are all of your connective tissues.
Gotcha.
You need vitamin C, because there's good evidence that promotes a good protein recovery as well. You need adequate fluids, and you need some rest and some good sleep as well. So yeah, there's a whole section in the book on how to try and strive for that good recovery, whether that's from muscle-related soreness or whether it's from a more chronic overuse injury.
Yeah, over here, LeBron James, basketball player, sleeps 12 hours a night on game night. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you need to at that level.
Sure.
It's essential. And also it helps regulate your hormones as well.
Sure.
And this is something we're seeing here in the UK a lot with type 2 diabetes and sleep disruption, in that you've got that dysregulation of hormones like leptin and insulin, but also growth hormone as well, which probably explains why LeBron is so tall.
Right. Yeah.
So in your book, when you discuss the major body parts, you have different levels rating them 1 through 3 for the bodyweight exercises. So to the average person reading your book, how would they determine which one they should or shouldn't do?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So, I mean, it depends on the level at which they're coming in. So just to explain, so this book here is obviously the version that you guys have got.
Right.
But if you still shop around, you could get the original, which you see the artwork is different.
Yes.
So there might be a few of these still available online, a bit of a collector's edition now. But we changed the artwork because we felt this maybe gave the impression it was a bit more of a muscle book.
Right, exactly.
So we've gone for something that hopefully explains more what
perfect.
the book is.
Right.
And in this revised edition, we then move to really clarify what these levels are about. So if you feel you're coming in as a real beginner or a novice, then you really should be looking to start with the level 1 exercise. And these are very low level. If then you feel quite confident, or maybe you don't feel you're quite getting the load on your body that you need, and then you can move to level 2. If you're a regular exerciser and you're quite an accomplished athlete or exerciser, then you might feel that the level 3 exercises are more appropriate for you. They might be safer. Your body might be able to cope with the extra demands. However, that said, even as somebody who is used to exercise and has a lot of sort of physical capability about themselves, the level 1 and 2 exercises are still suitable for those people,
right?
Because it depends on the degree of their injury and what they're specifically trying to target, whether it's a bit of range of motion or whether it's loading and so on. So there's something for everybody, but as a caveat, I would say if you're not used to exercising, start with the level 1 exercises.
And none of them should increase pain, right?
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the old adage, no pain, no gain, but
right.
we try and sort of disrupt that pattern of thinking, really. So I often use what's called the 3 out of 10 rule. So on your own pain scale, 0 being nothing, 10 being the worst you can imagine, do any exercise, rehabilitation wise or prehabilitation wise, that takes you up to but never beyond a 3 out of 10. And if you're moving into beyond a 3 out of 10, you're probably doing more damage.
Thank you for taking the time to discuss all these exercises. And again, we want to mention the book. Mike,
do you have a website or anything where people can reach you at? Or social media?
I want to say yes, but I don't know what it is. Ashley would know. But
we'll put it in the description box below if you just want to email it to us.
Right.
Yeah. We'll send you something to post-production.
There we go.
That sounds good.
All right. Any final thoughts you want to give, Rob?
I just want to say thank you both for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you both, and I really appreciate this platform and this conversation that we've had today. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's a terrific book. So I suggest
thank you. Very
everybody
kind.
get one. Yeah. Okay.
You've got one already. What more could you ask for?
That's right.
We need 2.